Well, it doesn't look like there's going to be a deal. And Major League Baseball and the Players Association are taking us to school. And your pal Sully is in a school recording this. And my new pupil is going to be Scott Bentley of Locked On Tigers. Guess what, folks? It's time for Locked On MLB.
You are Locked On MLB. Your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans, and welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. If you're watching me on YouTube, you can see me right there, my lower third. You can call me Sully. Thanks so much for making Locked On MLB your first listen, as we're available on all your podcasting catchers. You can follow us on Twitter and at Instagram at Locked On MLB Pods. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Let me explain to you my background here and my whole going to school shenanigans I was doing right at the front. Your pal Sully doesn't make all of his money from Locked On MLB and Hawk and Built Bars. No, I also have another calling. I am a teacher. I teach special education, and most of my kiddos that I teach are on what is called the autism spectrum, the moderate to severe. And I do that. And this is, I'm entering my little world here that I'm inviting you, my Locked On MLB listeners. I'm here in my classroom where I teach my kids, and I have a great love for that. And one of the things that I get a great sense of satisfaction that even on some days that are tough, and that you're pushing hard and you're trying to make breakthroughs here or there, even if no breakthroughs happen, you know that every day that you're looking to try to make a connection and try to make a breakthrough is positive, because every day is just getting you a little bit closer and closer. That's a great feeling I have here in my classroom with my kids. And I have the exact opposite feeling when I read about the labor negotiations of this ridiculous lockout. And you know what? This is just crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And you know what? It's so crazy that I feel that it's time to bring on someone else, because I can't go at this alone. And so that's why I have invited to be part of Locked On MLB for today, the host of Locked On Tigers. Hey, everyone, say hello. It's Scott Bentley, the host of Locked On Tigers. Find him on Twitter at Bentley Scotty. How you doing, Scott?
You know what? I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right. It was a long day today, but doing all right.
Yeah, this is the type of day. If you are a sports fan, there are certain types of days that you find yourself just, hitting refresh
Yes.
on your Twitter feed. Usually, it's things like the trade deadline or something like that, and not like, are we gonna get an agreement? Are we gonna get an agreement? Are we getting an agreement? We didn't get one. And
We did not.
so tell me your thoughts on this. No amount of Built Bars can calm me at this point.
It's unbelievably frustrating. They made so much progress, and they did make progress, and I think that is documented and real, and the numbers, assuming that they are accurate, would indicate that they are a lot closer than they were just a couple of days ago, a week ago. But here we are, and it's another day of now games are canceled again. We're not going to get a full 162. It's a very, very sad day for baseball.
Here's the thing that first of all, I talked about in yesterday's podcast, the idea that this will be the 75th anniversary of Jackie Robinson's breaking the color barrier. Rachel Robinson is turning 100 years old this year. And as I said yesterday, once you are approaching 100, you're on like extra time in a soccer game. Any moment the ref can blow their whistle. And I remember when Betty White died, like a month before her 100th birthday, and the people were like stunned and shocked And as someone said, try to live a life that if you die just before your 100th birthday, people say, "Oh no, she's too young."
Right.
Rachel Robinson is one of those people,
Absolutely.
and this very strong woman. If you've read his biographies, she was a rock in his life and was a rock in the elements of justice that Jackie pushed beyond just breaking the color barrier. He was there seems to be this narrative of Jackie that he was almost this passive martyr, which was the 180 degrees of who he actually was and what his legacy really should be. Is he was a fighter right up until the end. And Rachel Robinson was not a passive wife. She was a fighter right alongside him and took the baton after he died after the 1972 World Series 50 years ago. How do I know it's 50 years ago? I was born in 1972. I'm about to turn 50. I digress. But the fact of the matter is that we could be looking at missing the 75th anniversary. And this would certainly be the final, I think it's safe to say, would be the final major anniversary of this event in Rachel Robinson's life. Are we really going to do that over a self-imposed lockout of which we're this close to having an agreement? I mean, I think the answer is yes, but I mean, it's unbelievable that it's yes.
It is. No, it is. And one of the more frustrating parts today was that the owners added in this international draft kind of in the last second. Like, it seemed like we were really close to a deal, and then they were like, "Hey, what about we add in this international draft that we haven't added in a single offer leading up to this point?" And they gave them this like ultimatum where they were like, "Oh, you have three choices. You can either accept it, or
I'm sorry.
you can." Oh, you're
sorry
good.
about that. We had a glitch in the video there. Sorry.
You're all right.
Watching.
You can accept it, you can decline it, and then you can accept a deal with it in there, you can accept a deal without it in there, or you can accept a deal with it in there and then by November 15th decide if you actually want the international draft to be part of this or not. And the players' rebuttal was, we will let's keep the November 15th deadline, and let's actually we'll do that part. But if we decline the international draft by November 15th, then the rest of the CBA, the rest of the CBA we agree to today is just what it is. And the owners said if there's no agreement by the November 15th deadline, then the CBA gets blown up and we renegotiate. And that seems to be where all the marbles were lost today, just over the difference of what happens if the
November
players
15th.
on November 15th. Correct. We have now canceled games for this upcoming season over just the difference between what happens on November 15th.
Yeah. And of course, there's another sort of public relations way to do this, is because the owners have the Bob Nightingales and other mouthpieces in the press who carry their water for them all the time. And this is a way to make it look like to throw the blame on the players' lap, like saying, well, the players, we had something, the players turned it down. This is kind of there's such a shady negotiation tactic here of waiting to the last minute to throw something in and then turn around and say, well, they're the ones being unreasonable. It's so easy to get people to hate the players. They've been doing it as long as there's been labor unrest in baseball. But, it's maddening to me because it's so obvious what's happening here. The owners imposed the lockout, and the owners imposed this November 15th tomfoolery. And we could be talking about, look at Scott, I don't want you to take this the wrong way. I don't want to be talking to you about this.
I don't either, man.
and we're going to be talking Tigers and other things, and then in some of the next segment. That's called a tease. But the fact of the matter is that we should be talking about, hey, baseball's going to start on like the 6th or 7th instead of whenever it was. Boom, throw a couple of double headers in there. Everyone will be fine. Instead, we're talking about this blowing it up based upon something that will happen after the World Series parade.
Correct.
Ah!
Agreed. I agree with that.
If you pull any quote from this podcast, it should be this. Me in my classroom saying, ah!
I agree with that. I think that's the quote of the episode.
Unbelievable. It's just unbelievable. And this is all possible. This is all possible. And this is just sort of like, God, I mean, what kind of purpose are we serving here if we're fooling around here? And are you ready to discover your purpose and leave an impact wherever you go? Well, speaking of possible, Mission Possible, written and read by New York Times bestselling author, athlete, and one-time Mets prospect Tim Tebow, encourage you to find your inspiration, pursue your purpose, and create a life for yourself that counts. Ignite a new spark in your life through this new inspirational listen. Mission Possible is by Tim Tebow and is available everywhere that audiobooks are sold. And hey, I just want to say thanks so much for making Locked On MLB your first listen. I think Locked On Tigers should be your second listen. And what your third listen should be, why not Locked On MLB Prospects? Host Lindsey Crosby is a prospect encyclopedia, and he's going deep on the Major League Baseball stars of tomorrow. I wish they were playing games tomorrow. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. On this podcast, we have Scott Bentley from Locked On Tigers, as the two of us are just fed up with talking about the GD lockout. But here we is. That's right, Mom. I just said, here we is. My mom listens. She's not a fan of bad grammar. And there you go. Scott, tell me what you think is going to happen.
I believe that, man, I believe that we are close. I do, but close on paper doesn't mean close on time. And I think that even though we are closer than we've ever been, if you look at the luxury tax numbers between the two, they're getting a lot closer. The minimum salary is the difference between just a couple $1,000s at this point. The pre-arbitration pool money is only the difference of it's comfortably the smallest it's ever been, only the difference of a few $1 million at this point. But this international draft has really thrown a wrench in things, and I don't know, man. I think I'm hoping the optimistic part of me hopes that they both realize, hey, we're pretty close on everything else. Let's iron some stuff out, get a deal done, and maybe only a couple of series are axed.
Yeah. I mean, it's so weird that there seems to be such the goal of the owner seems to be more, how do we make the players look bad in this rather than how do we come up with a solution? And that's banana boat time.
Yeah, and it's certainly been a huge part of their negotiation and this whole strategy throughout this entire lockout has certainly been what route gets pressure from the outside put on the players rather than put on us, and they've executed it very well. I hate to admit it, but they have. They've done using the writers and using the network that they own. Right? People want to go, oh, let's check out a lockout update and go on MLB Network. Guess who owns MLB Network?
It's Pravda. That's just
right.
Pravda at this
right.
point.
So it's definitely a big part of all of the negotiations is definitely public appearance and which side is getting pressure put on it.
My hair is a mess, by the way. For those of you watching, this is end of the day teacher hair, and I'm just like, I didn't even groom myself. I didn't even groom myself for the podcast. I'm on YouTube right now, and I look like I look like I'm crawling under barbed wire. It's there have been elements that the owners have been doing things to shoot themselves in the foot or shoot themselves the game in the foot for their own purposes. I want to bring up something. I've talked about this on the podcast before by myself when I'm usually sitting screaming into the void, but now I have you to be my therapist for the day. Um, I I think there's been a bunch of things that have been kind of insidious in terms of that have been going on since the labor strife in the 90s, and that is to belittle the need and impact for stars in baseball. And I think a reason that is there's been such an antagonistic relationship between the players and owners that it is in the owner's best interest to not have stars be so huge that they carry the game, that not have stars feel like they're so important that they have that their compensation needs to be through the roof because they're what's putting their butts in the seats. Here's some of the things that I mean, it's funny, like the whole sabermetrics world and Moneyball world is in a way carrying the water for that mindset of you don't need a star, you just need to Voltron a player together that will put together the same amount of war, and therefore we don't need to sign a big star. We just need to get this type of production. I think one of the long-term effects that not promoting their own stars the way the NBA did. And remember, I mean, there's a HBO movie coming out about the Showtime Lakers. How Showtime didn't do a movie about the Showtime Lakers, I'll never understand. But remember the league of, you can't compare what sports media was now to then, but at the same time, the NBA was in the doldrums. They weren't even showing the NBA finals live. Teams were on the verge of folding. And the arrival of Bird and Magic just rejuvenated the league, became a star-driven league, and of course, it reached its apex in the '90s with Jordan and Barkley and Stockton and Malone and David Robinson and Scottie Pippen and Patrick Ewing, all the big stars from that era. Which at the same time, baseball had tons of stars who they were not promoting.
Correct.
And people have asked why have there not been as many. The African American fan base has dwindled, and when you take a look at who the stars who are being promoted, you could play in Utah and be a huge star. Don't talk to me about big markets. At that same time, in terms of African American stars in baseball, you had a galaxy of stars with wildly different personalities, whether it was Bonds, Barry Larkin, Ricky Henderson, Ken Griffey Jr., Frank Thomas, Tony Gwynn, Dave Stewart, Joe Carter, Kirby Puckett. I mean, just going down, probably Fred McGriff. I mean, you go right down the line of all these players who should have been heavily marketed and become like, idols the way that Ewing and forget Jordan. Jordan's that's like Babe Ruth. I mean, that's a different type of star. But Jordan or Isaiah Thomas or Reggie Miller, all these people became huge stars and household names, and they didn't have to play in the huge markets. And baseball lost an entire generation of people idolizing. Just think of who I just rattled off: Hall of Fame quality players, generational talents, who made no impact, who were basically not promoted because of that antagonistic relationship. And I think you're seeing the same thing now, that they're great players who most people would not know who Mike Trout was unless he was in uniform.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the biggest ones is how Barry Bonds is not like as big of a name as like LeBron James or something like that is beyond me. He won the MVP 7 times. Like it's and like you said, Mike Trout today. There's so many today that should be significantly bigger than they are. And Mike Trout's obviously the biggest one because
Juan Soto
is right. Juan Soto,
Tatis.
Absolutely. And there's a difference between big in the baseball community and big in pop culture. right? Some people might listen to this and be like, "Oh, what do you mean? Like everybody knows who Mike Trout is." Like, no, they don't.
No,
Like the baseball fans do. If you follow the game of baseball, sure, but I mean, Mike Trout is far from a household name, and he absolutely should be. And there's there I think they're trying to do better with Ohtani, and they have done slightly better so far with Shohei, but like it's been a year. Like we've gotten 1 year of fully healthy Ohtani, and him being in LA certainly helps and all that. But so is Mike Trout. So like it really is. Baseball and hockey are two of the worst sports on the planet in marketing their players, and it has continued to be a thing, and it continues to be a thing through today.
Yeah. I'm going to tease an episode I'm doing later this week, but just the concept of baseball becoming like a niche sport. And I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing. I mean, we're living in a niche culture. There's no homogenized culture that we have anymore in terms of, with the exception of superhero movies. But you know, I mean, that's the only thing that's part of, you know, and even that, there's a whole section of the population who's done watching superhero movies. But bringing up superhero movies for a reason here is, you know, they've kind of shown that the movie star system is no longer necessary,
right?
Because it doesn't matter who's wearing the Batman cowl, whether it's Ben Affleck or Christian Bale or Michael Keaton or the vampire from Twilight. You know, it's just the star is Batman, just like their baseball is banking that the star is the team. Like the biggest movies are all these Avenger films, but no one goes to see a Robert Downey Jr. movie or a Chris Evans movie. Look at the films they do that they're not Marvel. No one goes to see them. It's just the star is who's wearing the outfit. You know, there's the meme of the three Spider-Men pointing at each other, and then you just had a movie where you had the three dudes who played Spider-Man all in the same movie. It just shows like the star is Spider-Man. The star is Tom Holland or Garfield or Tobey Maguire. And in a way, baseball with the sabermetric mindset is, well, we don't need a homegrown star like a Mookie Betts. We could save a couple of bucks, put together an outfield with Hunter Renfroe and Kiki Hernandez and Verdugo, and nearly get to the World Series with them. You know, I mean, it kills the idea of the stars. And basketball has discovered if you have stars, you don't need the huge market. You could have San Antonio be a dynasty. You could have one of the biggest stars play in Utah or Milwaukee. You know,
and another just the when it comes to marketing, we saw earlier this week that baseball has an Apple TV game every Friday. So now you have the Apple TV game, you have your basic cable so that you can get your local network, and you have MLB TV, which your local network is blacked out of. So if you wanted to guarantee that you could watch every game, you have to buy 3 different subscription packages, whereas the NBA doesn't have anything. You can all highlights for the NBA. There's no copyright on highlights. You can tweet a basketball highlight and post it on a YouTube video. You can post it on Twitter. You can do whatever with it, and no one's going to be like, "Oh, this is taken out for copyright." It's just completely open for the public. You can watch however you want. You can save highlights however you want. There's none of that nonsense. And baseball now just continues to add more stipulations and more different routes you have to take to get their product. And I think that's another big reason for the lack of marketing.
And think about what you just said about that. And that's a great point, Scott Bentley of Locked On Tigers, is that the NBA has embraced the internet in ways that baseball hasn't.
Correct.
And that they understand that, first of all, people don't want to have 15 more. I need Paramount Plus and Disney Plus and YouTube Plus. Just tell me where I can watch the GD game. And don't make it more complicated when you're trying to gain those fans. The NBA knows that they have young eyeballs because they figured it out. And they also know that if your young kids on the Twitter and everything like that. Look at how old I just sounded. I called it the Twitter. When they post the highlights and they post this on TikTok or whatever, wherever they are, they know they're not committing copyright violation. They're carrying their water for them. They're making their lives easier. How do we get the young kids interested? Let the young kids do it. And all of a sudden, do it in a way which isn't like, the 21 Jump Street meme with Steve Buscemi. He's like, hello, young kids, and trying to act like a young kid. Get the real young kids to do it.
They'll do it for you, man.
Yes,
they
they're doing it for you. You've just saved money on your marketing campaign.
Right. They'll do it. And like we said, the NBA has masterclassed that. And for whatever reason, none of the other sports want to do it.
And baseball is so prime to be the sport of the internet age because they have games on every day. They have content
they have no competition the entire regular season. There's no other sport going on.
No other sport going on, and it's easier to follow the play-by-play online, much easier than basketball, which is going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth.
Right.
You have each pitch, you have each play, and baseball is still like, well, we got to make them watch it on television and sit down and just like my grandpa used to do. It's every time. There's been a new piece of technology that baseball has faced. They've always resisted it until they realized, no, we've got way too much money to make. They balked at doing all the games on radio. Oh, we're giving our product away. Then they realized, oh, wait, we've created all new fans. Oh, but they balked on television. We don't want people watching. We're just in the stands. Oh, wait, you've created all new fans. Oh, but we don't want to put it on pay TV because then it's got to be on free TV, until they realized they made more money they could ever dream of. And now they're blacking out games. And I made this point before, but you think about where are young eyeballs watching stuff, including what we're doing right now, on their devices. What teams do most people care about? Their local teams. So what's blacked out? The local teams on their devices. Why can't we get young people to watch it? Because you're turning it off.
Correct. And then if a walk-off home run happens, if that video comes, you're only going to see that video come across your feed from a verified MLB sanctioned account. You can't just have Joe Schmo on Twitter be like, oh, look at this sweet home run, and like record it on their phone and upload it, because then it's going to get clapped for copywriting.
This is all just stuff. Baseball has to repair so much, and you just wish that someone smart was there doing the repairs, kind of like at Rock Auto. And you know what? With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Why endure often pointless and seemingly intimidating questioning and wait for the person to go behind the counter and order the parts on their computer, choosing only brands that their warehouse happens to carry? That's ridiculous. You have computers with access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket. Save time and money when using Rock Auto. Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. Rock Auto prices are reliably low for every customer. Go explore their easy-to-use website today to find a solution for your auto parts needs. Go to rockauto.com right now. See all the parts available for your car, truck, right Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box, so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. All right, rockauto.com. Boy, I stumbled over that last part of it. I'm running out of energy. I am. But I'm going to find a new boost of energy. Do you know what I'm going to use? I'm going to use Built Bars. This is the time of year that a lot of us have given up our New Year's resolution, but not your pal Sully. I'm sticking to it. Thanks to Built Bar. It almost feels like it's not really a resolution because I love eating them. Hey, man, have you tried the Puffs?
Fantastic.
They're fantastic. Do you know what they are? This sounds like a Jurassic Park creation when I say they're protein-infused marshmallows. But guess what? It is not going to rampage and eat people. They're fluffy, they're marshmallowy, and they're not just a protein bar. They're a treat, and they're covered in 100% real chocolate. Puffs are a fan favorite with some incredible flavors. Yummy cinnamony churro, coconut marshmallow, banana cream pie. So good, they're going to be your new favorite. All Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate. Yes, that's 100% real chocolate. So go to Built.com. Scroll down to the macros chart. You'll be blown away. High protein, low cal, high fiber, low carb. Most Built Bars contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 grams of net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. Compare that to a candy bar, which is a candy bar. You know they're not good for you. They got so many great flavors: mint brownie, coconut almond, and new this month, white chocolate cookies and cream. They're all delicious. What is that?
It's phenomenal. By the way.
It is. It's
phenomenal.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Didn't mean to interrupt you. New flavors are coming out all the time. I think if they think a flavor is going to be good, they're just going to make it. It'll be delicious. It'll be good for you. That's what they're about to taste. That's what they taste. We're going to make it delicious first, then figure out how to make it healthy. I don't know how they do it. They pull it off every time. Go to Built.com. Use promo code LOCK15. Get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com. Well, you know it's getting late because people coming in here cleaning up my classroom. We're here with Scott Bentley of Locked On Tigers. Speaking about cleaning stuff up, if the game comes back, what are your thoughts on the Tigers? What's going to happen? Because I'll just say before I let you go, I thought by the end of the year, people who think the Tigers are a pushover, they were a challenging team by the end of the year. And Hinch is a fine manager. He's not just a trash can holder. And he is putting together a team that has some decent pitching. And with the acquisition of Baez, and a potentially winnable AL Central, I don't see them as unseating the White Sox in 2022, but I see them as, especially since we're going to have a 48-team playoff pool, that the Tigers could be one of those teams to get the 16th wildcard spot and maybe play Toledo or Spokane in that first series.
Yeah, it's all great points. But no, I think that's another reason that everybody's upset about what's happening. But the Tigers fan base, I think is maybe a little bit more upset than some others because we've been horrible for half a decade, horrible, and this is finally the first season that we're on the upswing, and finally the first season that people, even pre-playoff expansion, were like, hey, wild card's not that crazy of a thought. We're going to have the second full seasons out of Mize and Manning and Skubal. Mm-hmm. First full season for Manning, but second full season out of Mize and Skubal.
Those are three really good players you can have on that team. That
absolutely
are really good building blocks.
Absolutely. So you're going to get, presume another step in progression from them. You signed Erod, so you have an ace now. You signed Baez, so you have a shortstop for the first time since Jose Iglesias left. Mm-hmm. And then everybody knows Torque and Green are both getting called up this season too. Mm-hmm. So this was the year. This was the year that all of our patience and all of our waiting around and being frustrated and being upset and all of our losing was supposed to be worth it this season. And this is, of course, the season that everything hits the fan. So
the signing of Rodriguez, I just think that I think you and I talked about this comparison
before. We did, I think,
yeah. Yeah, the Charlie Liebrandt comparison, mm-hmm. that when the Braves had stockpiled a bunch of good, solid young pitchers, they brought in Charlie Liebrandt to be the veteran in the rotation, and in a similar way that the Royals brought in James Shields. Mm-hmm. And, there were a lot of people who completely maligned that deal because, the Royals are giving up on future Hall of Famer Will Myers. And what are they doing? They got James Shields and some schmuck named Wade Davis. What are they even thinking? And, but I said then in my old podcast that they got a major league pitcher and they need a major league pitcher. And I think that the acquisition of Rodriguez is that, I don't think he is. I think he had a fine year last year, obviously coming back from the COVID scare of 2020. Yes. And as someone who has followed the Red Sox as long as I have, I know that he has the, who said it? I think it was Jim Leland described the pitcher. I said he has the guts of a burglar.
That is a Jim Leland quote.
Yeah, I forget who he referred to it, but I said he has the guts of a burglar. And I love that expression. And that's definitely Rodriguez. He is a talented pitcher, but he's got guts and he's got baseball intelligence and he's experienced postseason pitcher. And it's important to have players like that. I think Baez is important to have a player like that on a young team to be the anchor. And I look at the White Sox are a fine team. The Indians have, it'll get me 2 years to get used to it. The Guardians have tons of good pitching. And if they come back whenever the lockout ends and they go on a supermarket sweep of every available hitter that they could sign to a 1-year deal, I bet the Guardians could watch them win the World Series the first year they're not the Indians. And I actually even think Minnesota, they had a bad year last year, but they were coming off of 2 or 3 pretty good years. And I don't thumb my nose at them completely. I think there's enough talent on that team. But
still have a great offense. The pitching will be a problem, but they still have a great offense.
But I think the Tigers are maybe 2 years away from being a legit division contender and maybe even a pennant contender because of there is no super team in the American League. And now if they expand the playoffs to 74 teams, then the need to have I can't wait for someone to try to correct me on that on Twitter. Actually, it wasn't 74.
It'll happen. You
Eventually.
can't say anything wrong. That is
Eventually,
correct.
That's true. Anyway, I just think they're an intriguing. I think we're going to have baseball this year. Okay? You can go to BetOnline. Oh, they're not sponsoring today's episode. But I think we're going to have baseball the year. Still go there. They help me live the good life. But
yes.
I think the Tigers are going to be a contender. And I think they're going to be at least interesting. They're at least going to be fun. It's going to be fun to go to Tiger games in 2022, assuming there are going to be Tiger games in 2022.
Correct. Yeah. No, I can't wait to get back to Comerica, man. That's my home away from home.
I'd love to go. I've been to Tiger Stadium. I've never been to Comerica. So
sure. Yeah. It really is. It's beautiful. It fits the city perfectly. I've been to 20. I've been to 2/3 of the major league parks, and I obviously have a bias, but I think Comerica is up there with some of the best of them for the ones that I've been to.
It's funny. I've been to 20 some odd stadiums myself, but so many of them don't exist anymore.
Yeah, fair enough.
Like Tiger Stadium, Milwaukee County Stadium, Shea Stadium, Veteran Stadium, Old Yankee Stadium.
I did get a chance to go to Old too. I've been to Old and New Yankee.
I've not been to New.
There you go.
Memorial Stadium in Baltimore. Turner Field in Atlanta. The Stick in
Candlestick. I'm always that's one that I wish I could have gone to.
It stunk. I went to so many games there because we lived in Palo Alto during my high school years, and the Giants were great. They were great. This was the Will Clark, Kevin Mitchell, going to the playoffs 3 years, going to the World Series and the Earthquake Series. I've made this point before. I absolutely believe when Horace Stoneham took the Giants from New York to San Francisco, he came up to the mayor of San Francisco and said, "Where is the worst place to put a baseball stadium?" And he said, "Well, Candlestick Point." They said, "Then fellas, break out the shovels. We're breaking ground."
Well, the new one I've heard is one of the best in baseball. I haven't been to that one yet.
I've been. It's my lone World Series game. I went with my father in 2014.
You didn't go in 12, did you?
I did not. No.
All right. Good.
All right. Good. I will leave that one alone. My dad and I, the last game we ever went together was Game 3 of the 2014 World Series.
Very cool.
One of the best nights of my life. And but yeah, AT&T Park or whatever the hell it's called now.
Yeah, it changes all the time.
Could be the best ballpark in baseball because it has all of the modern amenities. But
That's what I've heard.
But it also feels like it's been there forever. It has the great tradition of the people with the boats. Canoeing up there. It fits perfectly in the China Basin. The train goes, we would take the train from Palo Alto and it drops you right off at the stadium so you're not stuck in traffic.
Yep.
When we went to the World Series. It went right there, went to the game, got right back on the train and came home. It's perfect. What I love about Comerica, I've not been to Comerica. I went to Tiger Stadium, and I think I may have told you the story of going to Tiger Stadium with my dad. If not, we'll save it for another episode because we're hitting on 40 minutes here.
Honestly, I don't remember.
We went there. It was a packed game in 91 between Toronto and Detroit. And the Tigers were good in 91.
Yep.
And so it was a great game that we saw. Really great game. And I got to see Tiger Stadium packed to the gills with Sparky Anderson managing, and they still
Oh,
had
yeah.
Whitaker. They still had Whitaker. They still had Trammell.
Yep.
You know, Morris was no longer there, but it's still, it was how you would want to see a game there. What I like about Comerica, just from watching it on television, is they didn't try to replicate Tiger Stadium. They created a new experience.
Yeah.
And so I sometimes when a stadium tries to ape the previous one, I'm like, come on, create a new park, create a new experience. And I think that's pretty much exactly what they did with Comerica. And it looks gorgeous when I see it on TV.
It really is. They did a fantastic job. They took a lot of ideas and blueprints from some of the nicest stadiums at the time, which was like 98-ish. And so there's a couple of things where you walk past, you're like, oh, that kind of reminds me of Camden a little bit. Like there, you know what I mean? Like there's some stuff like that, but it is incredible. And for as sad as people were for obviously to see Tiger Stadium go away, it did not take very long for people to fall in love with Comerica, and it really is beautiful. And it's Comerica, Little Caesars, and Ford Field are all with you could throw a baseball and hit all three of them, like they're all on the same street. It's a very, 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 very cool part of town and a very, very nice stadium.
Do you want to, I like, again, I'm only judging this from being on television, watching the games on television. And I've actually only been to a handful of the new parks. The Petco in San Diego is fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. I actually liked the TED where the Braves used to play. What I wish they could do when they moved to the new stadium, I wish they could dynamite around Turner Field, lift it up, drag it to Oakland, and put it in the parking lot and have the A's play there. It's a perfectly good stadium. It's now, I guess they've converted it now to a football stadium.
Just about anything would be better than the Coliseum, I think.
I know. I've been to many, many games at Coliseum. But the thing is that one of the things that happened, when they created all the multi-purpose cookie cutter stadiums that I grew up on, like Riverfront, the Vet, Three Rivers Stadium, Old Bush Stadium, Fulton County Stadium, the ones that were all the concrete donuts, of which I didn't dislike because I grew up watching them. I had great memories in stadiums that looked like that. But they all kind of looked the same after a while. Well, with some of the new stadiums, some of them are starting to look the same. Like when you watch a game in Philadelphia, it kind of looks like the new National Stadium, which kind of looks like the new St. Louis Stadium. What I like about Comerica is that when you see it, you reckon that's Comerica. It has a distinct look. It has a unique look, and it feels modern yet hearkening to the great Tiger tradition. And I think that the best of the new ballparks, which I think are Camden Yards, I'm going to call it Jacobs Field.
When I went there, it was still called Jacobs.
Yeah, I went there when it was Jacobs Field too. AT&T Park, or whatever it's called out in San Francisco, which I think is the best one. I'm a little biased because I'm going there with my dad.
PNC is also.
Oh, I'm dying to go to PNC.
Beautiful.
Oh, that looks gorgeous. In fact, I have a feeling, and I love Petco. I think Petco is incredible.
Yeah.
Because it's right in the center of the gas lamp district. And you can walk around, go to some great restaurants and bars, and just walk to the stadium. And there's this great park area in center field where you can sort of, kids can run around there. There's a sand. It's beautiful. They incorporated the warehouse into left field. That's cool. Bananaville. That's Bananaville. But when I see the clips of PNC Park in Pittsburgh with the bridges and the skyline, and that's right next to where Three Rivers Stadium was, which just goes to show you it was in the ideal location, but it was boxed in. You couldn't see this gorgeous view of the city.
Right. PNC is one of those where once people go to it, it becomes their number one.
And I'm on that same front, no pun intended, I think Riverfront Stadium, I went to Riverfront Stadium and I went to Three Rivers Stadium, and what Great America Ballpark, which also has a unique look to it, a very distinct look to it, with the steamboat things in right field.
Right.
And of course, it looks out to the river. Riverfront, where I went to it, I happen to enjoy it there. And I think Cincinnati's a really nice city. But again, you had this beautiful, it's called Riverfront. It's got a gorgeous view of the river, but it was enclosed. You couldn't see it.
Right. Yeah,
It's banana time.
it is.
Well, this is all banana time. And by the way, thanks so much for making Locked On MLB or Locked On Tigers, whichever one you're happening to listen to right now, your first listen. I took a quick peek at the show I was going to promote at the end. I realized it's my show. So, hey, thanks for listening to my show, Locked On MLB. It turns out I'm a walking baseball encyclopedia. I had no idea. I have no idea about that. Hey, Scott Bentley of Locked On Tigers, where can people follow you?
You can follow me at Twitter at Bentley Scotty. You can follow my show on Twitter at Locked On Tigers. You can then get Locked On Tigers wherever you get your podcasts.
Fantastic. And you can follow us, as always, at Locked On MLB Pods. Same handle for Instagram. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Talking about the insanity that is this lockout and talk about the nice things like ballparks, things we'd like to go to with Scott Bentley of Locked On Tigers. This has been Locked On MLB. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please, I'm imploring you, call me Sully.